How's it going, Critter Family? I hope you all are doing well. Today we are going over a video about Michael Ellis. This is on the Learberg YouTube page. I'm not a fan of Learberg. It's a company that sells, lots of negative reinforcement tools and dog training tools, and such as like e-collars, prong collars, choke chains, that sort of stuff. But this is by Michael Ellis, Understanding Negative and Positive Punishment with Michael Ellis. Somebody asked me to look over him and give my opinion on him. I can't see really any videos of him working with the e-collar, although he apparently he likes the e-collar, which I did not know that, so that's another reason that I dislike his work. But we're just going to be talking about what he's talking about using punishment, because he has a bunch of favorite, e-collars and this and that. And I mean, I can't really, you're not going to get much from me other than just like, I disagree with the whole video of him talking about the e-collar. So we're going to be talking about him explaining punishment.
Operant conditioning, we have two forms of reinforcement and two forms of punishment, right? I'm going to talk about this a little bit today as well, the difference. But we tend to think about dog training. What's happened in the dog training world is the reward-based trainers have grabbed two of the quadrants and the traditionalists have grabbed two of the quadrants, right? And so what happens is the reward-based trainers are talking all about using positive...
Force-free, or, what they like to call themselves balance trainers, because they say they use all four quadrants. And then there's compulsion trainers, which I would say would be, instead of traditional trainers, I would call them compulsion trainers.
Reinforcement and negative punishment, the giving and withholding of rewards, right? Denying of reward is a form of punishment. And the traditionalists talk about negative reinforcement and positive punishment. I think it's the wrong way to look at it. We should look at it as the forms of reinforcement together and the forms of punishment together, right? So we have two ways of reinforcing behavior and we have two ways of punishing behavior. Reinforcing behavior just means the behavior is more likely.
All right, sorry, we had a little interruption there.
To occur in the future. The behavior itself is a good thing, right? Punishment means it's stopping behavior. Whatever you did is a bad thing. There's a consequence that you don't like that happens, right? So the two forms of reinforcement, positive reinforcement, you do something and I give you something you want. Negative reinforcement, there's discomfort being applied to you or something you don't like being applied to you. You perform a behavior and it stops.
And that's where really only two of the quadrants are necessary, or even really one is necessary, but two by human fault, meaning positive reinforcement is really the only way that is the best way, and realistically not the only way to teach a behavior, but the best way to teach a behavior. And you really only need to use positive reinforcement. If you want to, you can, of course, use the other quadrants. And he's going to explain what the quadrants are here in just a moment. But due to human error, we do have to use negative punishment, which means we're removing something the dog wants as a punishment. If the dog tries to jump for a ball, before we throw it, then we would remove the ball to prevent the dog from practicing that behavior. We don't want to reinforce that behavior. If the dog jumps and gets the ball, they are positively reinforced for jumping. And he'll again give you, more explanation on that. But, the just like he says, the traditionalists and the positive positive reinforcement trainers, reward trainers, force-free trainers really, have come to realize that we really only ever need positive reinforcement is really the only thing that's actually necessary when working with dogs. That we can get away with just using positive reinforcement. It's not necessary to use the other quadrant, negative reinforcement, to train an animal, no matter what animal you're working with.
Right? So the traditional way that we taught sit was negative reinforcement, right? And if I teach that right, I pull up on the leash. That's uncomfortable. I don't say anything, right? I pull up on the leash. The dog's like, that's uncomfortable. I say sit, and their butt drops, and I shut it off. Now, sit is still a good thing, right? It stopped discomfort. Sit can be a good thing because it predicts something you want. Sit can also be a good thing because it stops something you didn't like.
Sit on cue is a good thing for the human. You need to realize a lot of what we teach our dogs is not natural to them. Sitting on cue, staying living, sleeping in a crate, in a cage, not coming out of that crate when they want to, which, if they want to come out of the crate and we have to keep telling them no, then that tells me that that it's not natural for them to want to sleep in a cage. Now, can we teach them to associate it as something good? Yes. And when I teach, crate training, I actually end up where the dog wants to stay in the crate on their own, even when the door is wide open. And that tells me I did it right. But, so if you want to do something right, then the dog should automatically be offering these behaviors for you. You can get that type of behavior by using positive reinforcement.
So the two forms of reinforcement are for creating behavior, and the two forms of punishment for not. Punishment could be, you did something I didn't like, I applied physical discomfort to you.
Again, a natural behavior for the dog, which is either not sitting on cue, or jumping, or something natural for the dog that we don't like as humans. I'm not saying that you need to let your dog jump all over you or get away with murder or any of that. You can certainly teach them not to do these things, but it doesn't mean you need to apply physical discomfort just because you don't like what they did. You oftentimes, as the human, are reinforcing your dog's natural behaviors. We can teach them an alternate behavior, which again is not natural for them, but we can teach it in a positive manner. We don't have to apply discomfort to them because we don't like it. We are not entitled to that, to them being perfect animals. That's the whole point of training. And we're not entitled to have quick results, although people act like that. People often act like they're entitled to quick results, that, oh, my dog jumps on me, I'm upset about it, so I'm going to push him down. I'm going to push him, I'm going to step on his toes, I'm going to slap him in the face, I'm going to give him a collar correction. You're not entitled to your dog being perfect. And if you're going to act like that, then you really shouldn't have a dog.
The dog doesn't like. Anything I apply to you that you don't like, positive punishment, right? I can also deny you access to something you want. That's punishment. It's like docking your pay, right? You did something I don't want. Nope, you don't get this. Got to try again, right? And so that's what we call negative punishment, right? So in the early stages of training, I'm using negative punishment. I'm not really using positive punishment. So one of the things about our punishment markers too is they have to be conditioned on the job. We can condition reward markers in isolation. We cannot condition punishment markers in isolation. Meaning I can take my dog out, he's doing nothing, and say, yes, feed him, yes, feed him, yes, feed him, over and over again. You can't take your dog out and go, no, smack, no, smack, no, smack, when he's not doing anything wrong, right? Yeah, you can, but he's not going to like you anymore. He's going to be really a mess, right? There are people out there that are advocating for this. They're advocating for conditioning their punishers in isolation,
scary and dangerous.
Right? But it makes the dog super twitchy and jumpy. They don't want to be around you.
The dog
and
doesn't
they don't
trust
have any place
you.
to put that information. So any aversive experiences have to be connected to something the dog's doing. So normally the first place I condition my punishment markers, it's with negative punishment, right? And so there's two ways of doing this. Some people will use one punishment marker.
I don't even use a punishment marker. I used to, kind of thing, but I don't do that anymore because that is not necessary. I will just, take away whatever the dog wants. If the dog is trying to jump at me, I'll turn my back. That can be that. But I don't have a marker for it. I don't have anything. I don't say no. I don't say, if I say no, kind of, I'll say it just like that, so it's not been conditioned as a marker, but I don't use it as, if you want to use a positive interrupter, a lot of times I'll say easy, or I'll say it in a high-pitched voice, but I'm not trying to scare them. But it's used as a positive interrupter. So instead of being a no reward marker, you can use that where the dog hears it as a positive and it stops what they're doing in that moment. So you can then counter condition what they're doing to a different behavior. You can have them practice a different behavior. Instead of chasing the cat, you can say, hey, or easy, or make a kissy noise, or, clap your hands or whatever. But they don't see it as a negative. They see it as a positive and they say, whoa, what was that? You got my attention. And then you can call them to you. You can ask that, you can tell them leave it. You can tell them sit. You can tell them whatever you want. You give them an alternate behavior to give you to stop them from chasing the cat.
For negative punishment or withholding reward, and a separate one for positive punishment, consequences. So somebody might say wrong or for negative punishment and no for positive punishment. Right.
Which I don't think that really makes any difference either way. I don't think you even need that marker to tell them they've done something wrong, because they haven't done something wrong in their mind. They don't understand what you want of them, And even when they do understand, again, you have to see you have to. I raised a Shiba, so I work for the benefit of the dog. I don't make them do things that make no sense to them. Adonis, my Shiba, taught me, that you have to respect them, that make it worth it for him and make it make sense to him. If it doesn't make sense, he's not going to do it. Now you can teach them to go against their instincts and do stupid human things like, hey, coming when called, even though he wants to go roll in the dead bird, but I'm calling him to me and he gets something even better with me. To him, that might not make sense to leave the dead bird alone, but if he gets something better from me, then there you go. But I'm not going to punish him because he doesn't come to me, because it makes sense to him to roll in the dead bird.
It's like I'm going to apply a consequence. I usually just use the same one, and it just evolves over time. Because in the teaching phase, I'm not correcting you with positive punishment. I'm just denying you. But
you shouldn't be correcting them at all. You shouldn't be using positive punishment at all. That is the most unnecessary aspect of training, period.
It's not a bad idea to have two, right? And the first one I condition is my negative punishment marker. The place I usually condition it is at the crate door. So I have the dog, and the young dog's learning to come out of the crate. And I say, wait, and I start to open the crate door, and they want to come out, and I say, nope, and close it. I start to open the crate door, they start to come out, I say, nope, close it. What do they want? They want out, they hear the sound, and I take what they want away from them.
So again, locking them in a crate, that goes back to what I was talking about earlier. If the dog wants out of the crate so damn bad, then you need to work on them wanting to be in the crate longer. I mean, of course, even if they enjoy being in the crate, I would work on them. You can teach them, yes, you can teach this, and I can teach this as well. And I don't think it's detrimental to the dog. But at the same time, if you really want to respect your dog, then I would work on them wanting to stay in the crate with the door open on their own. And you can accomplish that very easily using positive reinforcement, where they go in there and it's like an invisible fortress that they stay in there because they want to, but that's just me being extra, if you want to call it that. But if your dog wants out of the crate so bad, then I have more respect for a dog to understand that that's why I don't like using a crate. That's not been properly conditioned to them. Now, eventually they're going to want to get out, but again, it's a cage. I don't like caging up animals. I don't like stalling horses. I like to give them the option. Of course, they can have an open barn, open door in the barn that they can go into into an open stall if they want to, but they can leave freely if they want to. I just don't like caging animals. However, if you have a puppy, you need to keep them in a pen. Of course, there's safety regulations. There's a way to keep your puppy safe, and I understand that if you want to use a crate or something to keep your dog safe and they are comfortable with it, that's fine. But just understand, that's where I'm coming from. That if you really have to keep doing it over and over and over again, closing the door on their face, try to make the crate a more positive place for the dog, so that they don't want to leave the crate so badly.
Right? It's a perfect place to condition it, right? Sometimes I condition it with young dogs. I'm doing food work, and they want the food that's in my hands, and they jump up on me, right? And when they jump up on me for the food, I just say, nope, and pull it back and pull it behind my back, that kind of thing. I usually, with my young working dog puppies, don't really care if they jump on me, so I like the enthusiasm, and unless they're really obnoxious about it, I use other spots to do it. But that would be the spot that I would do it. And then as I go forward, of course, I can up the consequences as necessary, right? And later in training, if my dog does something they're not supposed to do, I say no when they do the wrong thing. I withhold reward, and then I make them do it over again.
Do the wrong thing in the human's eyes. I'm just trying to use, this as an example of what to think for your dog. Your dog may be doing something that you don't want, or not doing what you want them to do, but it doesn't mean, and withholding a reward is not the same as adding a punishment. And adding a physical punishment. But at the same time, yes, I will have a dog, repeat a known behavior that they've shown they know and they understand. But at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm being fair. I want to be fair with them and not just withhold and make them do 1,000 circles, and before I throw one ball for them.
right? And then as necessary, I think, hey, you understand this, right? And I said, no, you didn't change your behavior, then no is followed with another consequence. But
Then that means the dog doesn't understand what you want. So they don't understand the no reward marker, or they don't understand what you want, or it's too distracting of an area. It's not fair to tell the dog no, take away their reward, and then add punishment on top of that. That to me tells me the dog doesn't understand what you want. There's no need ever to add physical punishment.
smart way of doing it is to have them both separate, right? Like
The smartest way is not having a physical punishment, where you have to add something to the dog dislikes to change a behavior. The easier, the better way, and the best way, in my opinion, and through experience, not just by my own personal opinion because I think I'm better than everybody else. Through my own experience, the best way is just get rid of the middleman, get rid of the no and the no reward marker or the punishment or whatnot, and just change your behavior. How about you change your behavior and not rely on the dog to change theirs? Everything we ask them to do is not natural to them.
one sound that means wrong, you're not getting a reward, you do it over, and another sound that means positive punishment. The truth of the matter,
Which means correction is coming. So prepare yourself, brace yourself for a shock collar shock, for an e-collar stimulation, shock, whatever. I can't just sit there and say stimulation, a little stim, because a lot of times the collars themselves will say nick. There's a stim and there's a nick, and it goes from from whatever you set it to, and then there's a level that you can set it to where it goes to a higher level. Think about nicking yourself. If you shave your face, or you shave your legs, or your underarms, or if you're shaving your body in any part, and if you've ever cut yourself, and it's noticeable enough, it's enough to break the skin and you bleed, that can be pretty painful. It's not forever, but in that moment, it's ouch, it's noticeable. Or if it's enough to, if you pinch yourself hard enough, and you break the skin. I'm not saying that the e-collar breaks the skin, but it's meant to mimic a nick. If a dog nips at you, or you nick yourself shaving, or you cut yourself somehow, like you're cutting up a tomato or something, and you nick your finger with the knife. That's what it's supposed to. I mean, it's mimicking a nick, and that to me is what the definition of a nick is that you're breaking the skin somehow. You're getting a little cut. Now, you may not bleed with the e-collar. Thank God you wouldn't. But it's supposed to mimic that amount of pain. So I can't just sit here and say, oh, it's just a stim. I've used it on myself, on my throat, on my neck. I don't put it on my fingers or my wrist. I've had it up to the 50 and 60. I've had it on 100. And it felt like someone was ripping the nerves out of my neck, the muscles, not the nerves. I'll be specific. It felt like somebody was just grabbing the muscles of my neck and just tore them and just pulled them as hard as they could. And it was very uncomfortable and also very shocking to the system.
though, is that no matter how I condition my punishment marker, once it's conditioned, it's still a correction. It's still positive punishment. It's something you apply to the dog that they don't like, right? Now, it
Which
gives
is
them
not necessary.
information about the consequence, just like my reward markers give the dog information about where the reward's going to be.
But just by punishing them doesn't tell them really anything. You can punish them and they still it can make them more confused, which a lot of times is what happens when you use punishment and reward at the same time. The punishment just corrects them. If I'm trying to solve a Rubik's Cube and I'm over here solving it and someone keeps, I'm not going fast enough, or I make a wrong turn on it or a wrong twist on it, and I get the wrong answer along the process of solving it, and someone keeps hitting me with an e-collar or a prong collar, they keep popping me with a prong collar, that's going to make me more confused and more startled and more flustered, and it's going to take me longer to solve the Rubik's Cube. And I'll actually do a video on this myself to show you the timing when I have no correction versus when I have correction, and we'll see how long it takes me to solve it with correction, with the threat of correction, and without it, with just me on my own. So stay tuned for that video.
That kind of thing, and what type of reward it might be. my punishment marker will also give the dog similar information, right? So if I were to say wrong, that's a correction. My dog's like, and if my dog really cares about their reward, it may be an intense correction, right? They're like, damn it, I didn't get what I want, right? And for a very highly motivated dog, sometimes that's a bigger punishment than me giving them a light pop on the leash, right?
I think that's a human, I think that's an excuse that humans like to use, that it excuses them being, sometimes abusive, or just, using unnecessary methods, such as popping on a prong collar or popping on a collar, by saying that, oh, by withholding the ball, that's more of a correction than a stim on the e-collar or a pop on the prong collar. I think that's an excuse, and I think it's baloney.
Right? And so the perception of the correction is from the dog's perspective, but it's still a correction, but it does give them information. And for most dogs, denying them reward in the beginning is a punishment, but it's not as intense a punishment as me giving them a physical correction. But that's going to be dog dependent, right?
Yeah, again, another excuse. Oh, that's dog dependent. Just because the dog doesn't yelp or the dog doesn't shut down in pain, or freak out, or it doesn't change the behavior right away, doesn't mean that the dog doesn't feel it. Trust me, the dogs feel it. And whether they care about it or not, it doesn't make it an excuse that you can go ahead and keep using the prong collar or the e-collar. I don't care that you have these working line, high drive Malinois and German Shepherds and Dutch Shepherds and all these other dogs that don't squeal when you use an e-collar, a shot collar, or a prong collar, or a combination of the two, or a choke chain. Just because they don't make audible noises and it changes their behavior doesn't mean it's necessary. It doesn't mean it's kind. It doesn't mean it's okay to use. It's an excuse by the human. It's in the bottom line, because people are like, oh, are you feeling enforcer, or are you just being soft? Okay, it's not necessary. You don't need those tools to get the responses you want. Look at Zach George's latest series where he's working with, I think, Wallace, I think his name is, the Malinois German Shepherd mix. He has a high drive dog. He doesn't have to use any of that nonsense.
I've probably mentioned in the past some of the studies they've done on different punishers and stress levels in dogs, and there's a classic.
And let me say that this video is old. I think this video is, maybe it's not that old. There's a couple that are old. This might just be a couple years old. Okay, so this video is just a couple years old, 2 years old, at least as of posting. I don't know when he actually did this, but this is 2 years old.
One that they did with a bunch of police dogs, right? Where they used negative.
Well, look at how those dogs are trained to begin with. They have been trained so aggressive and abusively that you trying to use positive reinforcement with them now isn't going to mean diddly squat, because they rely on being choked out, kicked, beaten, shocked the hell out of them to stop biting the person that they're biting.
Punishment, withholding reward. In this case, it was the dog's kongs or balls or whatever they used as their reward toy. Prong collars and e-collars, right? And they measured cortisol levels in the dog's bloodstream with the various punishers, and they ranked them in terms of how intensely the dogs perceived those. And the highest level of stress was with the prong collar, and the lowest level was with the e-collar.
Oh, bullshit. Where are these studies? Where were these studies done? Again, they may not use e-collars a whole lot, but they do use prong collars a whole lot. They helicopter the dogs. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm full of it. But I'd like to see these studies. And just because this is one solitary study, I'd like to see multiple studies. Either way, it doesn't matter if the dog doesn't if the dogs do not find the e-collar nearly as punishing, it still does not excuse you to use the e-collar. It's still not necessary.
And that meant for this group of dogs, not giving them their ball when they made a mistake was more stressful than the e-collar was, right? And I'm not saying that to say that, hey, the e-collar is nicer than negative punishment, but it means the perception of the dog matters, right? Of course, there's a lot of questions there, like how sensitive is the dog and what level we're using the e-collar on. There's a whole bunch of stuff there that's a little sketchy, but the idea basically is that for a given dog, denying them reward can be a big deal.
Absolutely, and that's why you can use that as as your ultimate punisher if you're going to do that. You don't need to use these other collars and nonsense.
I've experienced 3 dogs in my life that would come after you if you denied them a reward, but were fine with being physically corrected.
Well, no, they go after you because they're going after the reward. I don't know. I haven't been in his position, but I mean, they will go after the reward is what I'm thinking. Not that they're fine with the physical correction, is that probably that the physical correction kept them from going after the person more because it was a stronger correction than and it physically kept them from being able to get to the reward they wanted. If they have something around their throat or their neck and they're getting shocked or they're getting prong collared in the neck versus they're free and they're trying to go after, you're not using a leash to correct them when you're using you're using negative punishment when you're trying to remove the ball or the toy. The chances are the dog is loose. But when they have a prong or an e-collar on, then you have a way to stop them and control them and limit them.
Like, so if you went nope and took their ball away, you got one time, they'd start to get all stimulated, like, and you did it a second time, and they'd come for you, like no balls about it, like come for you to kill you. Like they were not happy about that, right? And so that's extremely rare.
That doesn't mean that it's okay to use, you're excusing the use of e-collars and prong collars. That shows, how was that dog's training otherwise? How aggressive was it, that dog's training, that they made them that aggressive? Whatever people were in charge of that animal made them so aggressive that they wanted to go after you to hurt you for keeping their ball away. Tells me that a whole lot about how abusive the trainers were or the people that were in charge of the dog.
But it happens. And so when we're talking about value of punishment, it's a little like value of reinforcement. Depends on how much that dog cares about what I'm denying them. It also depends on the intensity of the punishment that's followed the sound in the past. So if I said no and popped you lightly on the leash,
he's going to say lightly, but it's not lightly when it's on a prong collar. Otherwise, if you did it lightly and it didn't do anything, then there's no point in it. You have to pop them hard enough for it to be a correction for the animal, which again is unnecessary.
and no is a punishment that's roughly equivalent to a light pop on the leash. If I've said no and hit you at 100 on the e-collar, now no has more value.
That's just absolutely abusive.
So if I've cranked up the value on a condition punisher, and this is one of the reasons that people will use more than one, they'll use wrong and no, or something, or whatever else sounds, is because if they've cranked up the value on one of them at a certain point, it's too big a correction for minor infractions. So that's one.
You don't need a major correction for any behavior. I don't care if a dog's trying to kill you or even kill another dog. I mean, let me say this. If I have a dog that is trying to kill another dog, then I will absolutely raise my voice and do whatever I need to. I'm not talking about like a dog fight that broke out. I'm talking about like a dog that has intent to harm other animals, but we have them safely secured on a leash. They have a muzzle. They're in a house. They're, blah, 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 blah. I'm not talking about like just some loose dog that's going to go try and kill all these other dogs. But even with that type of behavior, we can still change it and make this dog safe using positive reinforcement.
One of the things that's really important, your dog's past experience with your condition punisher has to be taken into account when I apply it to a certain type of behavior. Otherwise, I'm doling out, a lifetime prison sentence for a misdemeanor, right? And so if my dog does something small, I have to be very careful if I've amped up the value of my condition punisher. So I've had some circumstance where my dog did something really bad and I said no and I got him really hard. Now I can't use no anymore for small things.
So that's just abusive, in my opinion. Michael Ellis is abusive. That's as simple as it is for me. That seeing that he that's the whole problem with punishment, is that if you can be so aggressive to stop a certain behavior and your dog will shut down and never try again. I would much rather have a mistimed reward than any correction or a mistimed correction. Or with correction, there's so much leeway between small and large, and a major correction and a minor correction. And it's just, If it's not in the right hands, it's scary and it's dangerous. And you can create a dog that wants to kill you and other animals.
My dog's going to start to go like, ah, shit, that's too much. And they get worried about something, and I may get fallout from that. So there are people that...
Because you abused your animal. You overcorrected them. That's abuse. To me.
that actually have multiples, right? I have my really bad one that I use, like that means the emergency one.
That means that I'm going to abuse you and I'm going to shock the hell out of you. All right, I've been going at this long enough, so thanks for watching. That's the video. Hope you all enjoyed it. Hope you got something from it. Go say hi to do to your little critters. Go say hi to do for me. Give them some kind of love and they appreciate. Until next time, practice peace, patience, and positivity.